Welcome to the Pull Podcast. I am your host, Big Jack. Today we have Shirley Wantland with us. Shirley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been working in the recovery field. I felt like you'd be an awesome interview because of recovery consultants, something that you've been doing for the last, 8 years?
11 years.
Oh, it's been 8 years solo though, right? Solo. Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry, I got that mixed up. So tell me a little bit about recovery consultants.
So, we provide holistic care, wraparound services for clients who are either stuck, trying to find a solution, have been trying to do this for a while, and haven't found a place to go or something that resonates. So I would say we're a little bit out of the box. People come to us, I would say, when AA and treatment haven't worked for them for whatever reason. And so we kind of get those people that are, I would say, out of the box. So
sure.
We have out-of-the-box solutions.
No, of course, right? And then listen, it's not everybody's cup of tea, whatever the recovery program is, and you want to be respectful of everybody's choices, of course. And so the fact that there's something out there that's, able to help somebody still is nice to know. When you say wraparound services, can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure. We provide in-home services like recovery companion services, case management, and treatment placement. So we're trying to figure out what's the best kind of solution and what does the best team or kind of group of solutions look like for any particular person. And we work a lot with the family to set the right boundaries, the right consequences to ideally, everyone has an internal motivation, right? But sometimes, when they come to us, they might not have that yet. So we try to create external motivation so that we can switch into that internal motivation.
That's great. And then you guys offer like coaching and things of that sort as well?
We do coaching. And I would say the coaching is a little bit different because it's confrontational. It's getting kind of because I always say like there's the 5% of our conscious mind, which is right now, right? I'm Shirley, you're Jack, we're talking. But then there's the 95% of the mind, the subconscious, and that's really what drives our behavior, our limiting beliefs, our patterns, our trauma. So it's getting into those things that people don't want to get into. So it's a different kind of coaching. Yeah.
Would you say that it's kind of like the parental role without the codependency?
Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, you said it's a little bit confrontational. And so like my thought is like, it sounds like it's a parent telling their kid what they do, but it seems like it's a role where you're holding people accountable.
Yes.
Right. So there's the code. So it's kind of like a parent without the codependency, meaning like you're not going to like accept their answer if it's something that isn't good for them.
Exactly. And it's just trying to get to the truth. Because I always say our healing is proportional to the amount of truth that we can handle about ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of getting to the truth. When I say confrontational, it's those things that like, I don't quite want to admit that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's easier to blame other people or other situations, but it's like, it's very disempowering to go through life that way.
Sure.
When you can really take accountability of like, okay, I'm kind of choosing because I like to feel significant when I jump in and help people. So then now I'm not going to say, why am I not getting any support? Why does this always happen to me? It's like, okay, I can kind of see what's happening here. So it creates more peace.
Sure.
And then an opportunity to shift that if the person so chooses.
And there's a factor of motivation in there as well, right? Sometimes people need attaboys, for whatever reason. And it's helpful to because it is a day at a time. And sometimes like if you can get them to that aspect and maybe coach them a day at a time for a little while until it becomes habitual for themselves, like, having them feel good about what they're accomplishing, I imagine is really helpful.
Yeah, it's so helpful. And I would say like, you and I see it all the time. Like there's so much shame that comes up for people, particularly who are going through recovery. They're shameful of the things that have happened. They're shameful of kind of the past. And it kind of can prevent them from really healing. Sure. Because they don't want to look at it. It's like, I'm just going to avoid that and just keep moving on. And it's that keeps churning.
Well, like you said, if it's the avoidance factor, then really what we're doing is avoiding the truth.
Exactly.
Right. And just being okay with the truth in the sense that you're not the only person that's ever done these things or acted like this or have a problem with this.
Yes.
And I remember early recovery when you are apprehensive to admit something and be honest about something, but then you do, and then you find out that the other person might have done it as well. And you're like, oh, that's funny. I love recovery programs and just even some sort of social support circle, whether it's a coach or whether it's a companion, somebody to talk to, right? It's always important to have somebody to talk to. And I always like the fact that like when those conversations happen, I feel like solution is discussed, right? And the solution comes up because usually you're talking about something where, especially if somebody maybe like in our position that have been on the other side of this thing for a little while, all of a sudden, it's easier for us to talk about it because the shame's gone.
Yeah.
And so I can joke around about some of the things that I did where somebody's looking at me like, why would you even admit that out loud?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it allows them to be vulnerable. And that's where I think healing starts to happen.
And it's the most authentic form of freedom, right? When you're not held by the fear and the shame and you can just authentically be yourself and own all the things, that's where freedom is.
It's literally freedom. That's the best word to use to describe it. I remember the day that I felt that freedom. And I mean, that's a day, like I remember the first day I took a drink, right?
Yep.
Like they were like right up there at the same thing. And so it's like all of a sudden now I have this thing to take place of whatever, drink, drug, whatever it is.
Yes. And I think that's the big point that we're trying to drive at Recovery Consultants. Yes, we're trying to get people sober, but beyond that, we're trying to find that freedom for them, right?
Sure. Yeah, because absolutely. And I just love the fact that there's a lot of options out there. Yeah. Because not everything is a one size fits all. And I have my preference or whatever, but that doesn't even matter because, somebody else has their own preference as well. I don't want people to die anymore. This segment of the Pull Podcast is brought to you by Creekside Recovery.
I think as humans, we're all looking to be seen, heard, and loved. And I feel like people who are struggling in active addiction need it the most and get it the least.
Wow. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Listen, I know we're not loved at ERs and things of that sort because we're probably, a little unruly when we show up or under the influence. And I'm sure we're a burden to society for a while, but it doesn't mean we're not good people. We just have a bad problem.
Exactly. And the point is like to see underneath all of that, right? And I wish more professionals and people kind of working in this sort of industry really saw it like that.
Sure.
Rather than a judgment call of like, oh God, this fucking person again.
Right.
It's like, well, clearly they're showing up because they're in a lot of pain. But it's hard to see that underneath the behavior because that's the thing that gets under everyone's skin and then the judgment and oh my God. But if we can kind of see past that, it's like it's someone that's crying out and for help in some form or fashion and in an immense amount of pain, whether emotional or otherwise. And I think if we could kind of take that approach, more people would be heard, seen, and loved.
And recovered, hopefully.
And recovered,
right?
Exactly.
Just the asset of being a human and being alive is such a big deal that I don't think people take fully seriously in the sense that, it's worth more than any money in the world. And addicts and alcoholics are some of the most impressive people I've ever met in my entire life.
Absolutely.
With the most potential I've ever seen in my entire life.
Absolutely.
With the most compassion I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yes.
And the fact that people are dying, like I have no idea if that person was put on earth to do something extremely impressive that maybe cures cancer or maybe does something like that. But because of drugs and alcohol, they never got that opportunity. Yeah. That scares the living daylights out of me.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Jack, because that's one of the things my experience, sometimes when I talk to lay people or normies who aren't in this world, they're like, oh my God, what is that like working with addicts all the time? And they must be, bottom of the barrel. I'm like, no, they're some of the most intelligent people I've ever worked with, the most empathetic, the most creative, and just kind of thinking on a different wavelength. And I think for sometimes some of those same reasons is why they don't fit in the mold of normal a lot of times, which, has its own repercussions. But
let's change quote unquote normal, right? I'm so tired of that just definition of normal. Like who even came up with that? What is normal, right? Because I feel like half the people in the world just don't show whatever's going on at home, right? Everybody's got this weird,
more than that.
Don't share what's going on in the home and all this. Everybody suffers from something.
Yes. Well, we're put on and we've kind of adopted these like societal rules and conditionings, but we don't question like, why are we doing it?
Yeah. There's not a perfect person in the world. So why is everybody so hyper focused on being perfect all the time?
Yeah.
It's so weird. So a little bit about your background, if you don't mind too, so they can learn a little bit about you. What makes you do what you do? What makes you tick? When did you decide you wanted to do this stuff? Can you give me a little color?
Absolutely. I'm one of the odd ones because I'm not in recovery myself.
Right.
Yet I really care about this. And people are like, why?
It's like a social worker.
In a way, but I think like to explain it, like I've always been obsessed with drugs and addiction ever since I was young. I remember like in high school and middle school, like hearing that show Intervention.
Yeah.
I would sit at home and
fascinating.
watch. Fascinating. I would sit at home and just watch that over and over. My friends are like, why don't you come hang out with us? And I was like, I gotta watch a show. Yes. And I was just deeply engrossed in it. So I think between that, there was a lot of addiction happening in my family.
Okay.
I think being the oldest daughter of 2 immigrants, a lot was placed on my shoulders in terms of responsibility. So when my cousin was going through this addiction in Vietnam, it was like, Shirley, what do we do? And at the time I was 18, I'm like, I don't fucking know, but it was kind of that
It was
journey,
like your introduction.
My introduction in a way. And I think when I kind of fell into this behavioral health world of kind of addiction treatment, I remember getting offered the position at a large organization. I think they owned like 150 different rehabs at the time.
Wow.
And I didn't even know this whole industry existed, but I remember Googling it and I was like, lovingly, I was like, I think I'm the right kind of crazy to be really good at this. And so I say that with kind of tongue in cheek, but because it takes a certain person, right? It's a calling. And if you don't have that calling and you're not willing to dedicate it, this is not like a paycheck, grabbing sort of job.
The amount of patience.
Yes.
The amount of patience it requires on a daily basis to deal with us when we are in our addictions.
Yeah.
It is like, I don't wish that on my worst enemy. However, they still need help.
They still need help. And the families that are navigating this need a lot of help, So it's like a whole thing. And I think that's where I've naturally been some sort of social worker my whole life, because I think being in that role, I've always, maybe being a parentified child, I've always understood the needs of other people and then been able to translate.
Sure.
And I think that's what we do well at Recovery Consultants, is understanding the goals are the same between parent and, addict, but they may not agree on how to get there. Right. And so I kind of remind that and kind of help translate. It's like, hey, we're on the same page here.
Yeah. No, the goals. Yeah. We're talking about the same thing.
It's the same thing.
You're talking about one route. The other person's talking about another. However, like the end game's the same. So let's not, but I think the familiarity, right? And that's the other part of the family. Sometimes you need that unbiased third party to come in. Whether it's to be the person that adds structure and accountability in the addict's life that needs it.
Absolutely.
Or whether it's just because they can't have a conversation because of the familiarity, right? Like
and the baggage. You know what I mean? Like if I'm a mom and I've been going through this with my son for 20 years, every time there's like it's like, oh shit, like I don't want to do this again because 3 years ago he said this and then he's not going to follow through.
That's
and
right.
so we come in and we're a third party, like you said, and we don't have the baggage, right? I wasn't there 3 years ago when he lied to you or
the possible trauma. Who knows, right? Like, and I know for me, it wasn't helpful to have my parents involved in any of it when I was going through what I was going through, other than their love and support, because they know how to push my buttons, just like I know how to push theirs, because we installed them.
Yes, absolutely.
We installed those buttons. And so as a result of that, because we know how to push them, it's just going to end up having that friction that you were talking about, right?
Absolutely.
And so bringing in that third party, being able to basically be the translator, for lack of better expression.
Absolutely. And parents and families tell us that all the time. They're like, well, you're just saying the things that we've already said for the last 5 years. So what is this going to be? And how is this going to be any different? And it's like, because we come to it with a different energy, without the baggage and a different expectation. I said,
there it is.
Johnny's going to show up tomorrow at 5. He always says that. He's never going to show up. I was like, no, I looked him in the eye. He promised me.
We had a deal.
I believe that he's going to show up. Yeah. And by and large, they show up. And the family is like, how did you do that? And it's not really.
Because it came from a different person.
It came from a different person. And I see the potential in the person underneath. And that's who I'm speaking to.
Sure.
And I think that's hard for families to do. And I don't
You're not coming
them.
from a judgmental place, which the family probably is, right? Where it's like you're talking to the person that could be.
Exactly.
Exactly. Talking to the person in which hopefully they envision as well in themselves, right? The person, because most addicts and alcoholics don't want to be that.
No.
No. I was sick and tired of being the guy that everybody knew that was going to be, a fall down drunk. I didn't want to be that. I just didn't know how to help it, but I also needed my booze.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we see so often is like in addiction, it becomes your identity.
Yeah.
Right? Like not just like who you are, but it's like your friends, the people around you, your network. And then it's terrifying to step into something that you don't fucking know what it's going to look like on the other side.
Exactly.
And I think people don't fully understand that. They're just like, oh, well, why don't they just stop? And it'd be like, well, if your name is Susan, can you just say, well, now your name is Joanna?
Yeah. And you're not going to be
okay with it.
Promise you don't respond to it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I think giving families and other people who aren't in the addiction kind of that sort of information allows them to come to it from a different place. Like you're saying, with more compassion, more love, because that's what's going to move the needle. Not the family telling, hey, you should, you need to. They know what they should do. They're not doing it.
Yeah.
So what is someone telling them the 50th time going to make a difference?
No. It's not. Yeah. Except that's why it's got to come from that third party. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
exactly.
I appreciate that sentiment very much. So, so you've been working in Marin County, is that?
In Marin County, but we've got, a team down in Southern California and we have a little team in New York and Connecticut.
Wow.
So I would say we work all over, but the majority is in kind of northern Southern California.
Okay, cool. Well, that's awesome. So, one of the topics and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, and I hope this isn't like a super big surprise, but I've seen you post recently, and maybe it wasn't recently, but I saw something talking about psilocybin as part of treatment. That's a really hot topic at the moment in this field because, they say it's supposedly good for PTSD as well as trauma. Or, I mean, as well as just, standard trauma? Yeah,
I would say psychedelics in general are like a big hot topic right now kind of in our culture. And it's kind of been brought into the recovery world. And I know it's still controversial a little bit. Is this helpful? Is it not? And, my personal experience, my professional experience has been like anything, it's a tool, right? And I think it can be helpful. It's how is it used and for what purpose and what intention? And then what does the work look like afterwards? I think sometimes people have this idea of, I'm going to go on a plant medicine psychedelic journey and then all my problems are going to be cured and I'm just going to be this new person. I think it can give someone that ability, but then you still got to do the work.
Yeah.
That's where I don't see people.
I watched a 30 for 30, I think, or like a E60 on Aaron Rodgers, some sort of documentary. And I think it was Ibogaine.
I think he did ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, that's what it was. But he was like, he even compared it to, he was like, 1 year I threw 20 touchdowns and this and that. And then the next, after ayahuasca, I came back, I threw 40 touchdowns and the same amount of interceptions and I won a Super Bowl or an MVP.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of scary to me because people idolize that guy.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I get it. That's his experience and he's entitled to his opinion in terms of, what he thinks, but I don't necessarily, I'm not convinced yet that there's enough data to be able to think that everybody's appropriate for it, right? I mean, it's very risky.
It's risky. I would say, I'm going to speak in kind of anecdotal for myself and my own experience. I think, is it something people I think should experience and could experience in a lovely way? Yes. Is everyone ready and appropriate for it? No.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest piece because I think, those Aaron Rodgers stories can happen. And you hear about that a lot, but it also takes a lot of work to integrate kind of those experiences. It's not like you just go have this experience and, oh my God, I'm cured. But I do think for the right people, it can allow you to be in touch with something that's greater than yourself. It's like you tap into that consciousness, and I'm going to get a little bit woo-woo here, but that it makes us feel connected.
Yeah. To I forget what they call it. In Avatar, they have it as like where they connect to the tree.
Yes.
It's like,
yes.
Oh, I forget the name of it. I'm terrible with that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it makes you feel like you're rooted in the life, that there's something bigger out there.
There's something bigger, and it's just a reconnection to yourself, I think, more importantly. Like us as modern humans, we got all this technology. We think we're really clever, but we've really kind of disconnected with our true nature, right? And I think that's what creates so much anxiety and depression. We're like, what the fuck are we doing? Are we meant to just sit on Zoom all day? Like, is this supposed to be our life? But we forget to like go out in nature and like
put your feet in
the dirt and then be with the birds and just kind of notice like, this is how we're meant to be.
Yeah.
But we've kind of, I think,
over-evolved
into kind of almost like de-evolving because we think we're more clever, right, than nature. And I think we are quite clever, but we've lost our wisdom, our innate wisdom. And I think psychedelics and these sort of things have the ability to potentially connect you back to that inner wisdom and knowing.
Well, my whole thing is, Jake Paul did the same thing, ayahuasca, before the Tyson fight. And I think he had done it once before. And so you got all these like people that are socially influential and they're going and doing this stuff, and people think that like maybe they should do it too. And it scares me because, especially if you're under 25, right? Because I think the amygdala is still part of the brain for sure, at least in men, until you're 25 is still maturing. And if you were to introduce some sort of psychedelic, if you have any predisposition to some sort of mental illness, like you could go into a full-blown psychosis and never come out.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that they're sitting out there saying everybody should go do it.
Yeah. But
they certainly make it look pretty attractive.
They make it look attractive. And I think there's like a responsibility piece, right? To kind of share. And, I'll disclose, I've sat in a lot of ayahuasca circles and ceremonies. I tell you, it is not this like kumbaya, like you are confronting the deepest parts of yourself that you have wanted to hide from. That's where you're going. You're puking in a bucket.
Yeah.
When you've got a bucket and you've got your head sitting in there,
you're going to war with yourself.
You're going to war with yourself. I mean, it really is. So it's not like you're going out there and like getting high on ayahuasca. You know what I mean? Like there are much other enjoyable ways if you're going to choose that. It is really like spiritual kind of warfare within yourself. And so you got to be ready, right?
Yeah, but I guess the feeling coming out of it makes it all worth it is what it sounds like.
Yes, the feeling coming out of it can make it worth it. And for some people, there's still a lot that comes up. There's, it brings up a lot of our shadow parts and the parts we don't want to deal with. And it's like, so, if you want to jump over that fence, are you ready to see what's on the other side?
Wow, shadow parts. I like that.
Yes. And that can be really scary for people. And if, like you're saying, if you're going through active kind of mental health and you're unstable, and that is not a good...
You could argue that essentially what they're doing is being forced to be honest with themselves.
Exactly. And I say
they're being forced to see the truth about themselves.
Yes, you are being forced, and it's a complete loss of control too, which for me as a perfectionist kind of control, it was scary as shit to go in there and just, I'm like, oh my God, am I going to relive my traumas? And sure enough, I did. And it was really profoundly scary. And for a person like me who's always had control and I know what's going to happen, I mean, it was terrifying, the idea of I was going to have no control.
Once it's in you, you're going for the ride.
6 to 8 hours.
It's like being on the roller coaster and locked in.
You cannot get off. And there are many times where I'm like, why the hell did I do this? Every time I go in, I'm like, why did I do this? Why did I pay money to come here and do this? And because when you're in it, it is so uncomfortable. Every fiber of you is just
so it really is just the feeling that you have when you're done with it.
It's the feeling, it's the integration you have when you're done with it, the feeling of connection, the feeling of being, I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like being connected to something more than just yourself. Like there's this like whole big universe and you're just part of it. It just kind of brings peace into, and it just makes our little problems that we think are so important and so big, it's just minuscule, right? In the whole grand scheme of things. So there's some comfort that comes out of that. But I think to what you're saying, like being forced to the truth about yourself, I think that's what it can do, right? And that's like one of the tools, because That's what I was talking about earlier. We have this like 5% of us that's doing this, that's like ready to talk about things, but there's that other 95%, and it's almost like a firewall, right? It's in place because we're trying to protect ourselves. We don't want to be seen as bad people. We don't want to have the shame up, but it then also precludes us from getting to the truth. So I think things like psychedelics, and it's not the only tool in the toolbox. There's a lot of things out there. Get behind that firewall and then look at the truth.
Well, my argument only comes from a place of like, I want something. I want a solution for our veterans more than anything, right? And I fully support it in that regard. They have severe PTSD, right? That is something that like no one can really understand unless you've been through it. And I want to have a solution for them because it's sad what happens to them when they come back. However, I see it as once it catches on, there's going to be a lot of doctors pumping this stuff. And it's going to be just sort of kids locally that are switching seats on the Titanic. I really don't think insurance companies are going to get on board with it anytime. So it's all going to be private pay anyway. But, another good example for that is what is available right now, which is ketamine. And so ketamine treatment, what's the primary purpose of that? I mean, is it PTSD as well, or is it more like?
I think right now, people use it for a lot of different things, but I
depression?
think exactly. I think what it's indicated for clinically is for depression and treatment-resistant depression.
Okay.
And I've had clients who have done it and have done well. And I've had clients who've done it and didn't make a difference.
Right.
So, it's not this like panacea. It's like, oh, like this is going to be the thing that cures everyone. Like anything, it has potential. And with anything with like a lot of buzz and a lot of interest, you get a lot of players, right, that come into it. And some are doing it for the right intentions and some are here to make a buck, So you have to discern kind of the difference and know like, hey, am I right for this?
It's just scary. I guess I feel bad because I got this huge bias ever since like, the pain pill epidemic and all this other stuff, like that these doctors just start pumping this stuff, because ultimately, at least I'm going to speak for myself here, is that like anything that feels good, I'm going to do a lot of it.
Yeah.
Whether it's, including today, even though I'm sober, it's like I'll still work a lot because I love it. That's just who I am. And so I worry about them being introduced to something else, right? I also don't believe that there's such thing as a pill or an experience or like a psychedelic out there that will fix 100% who you are. So there's still work that needs to happen along with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest like responsible thing for people, because everyone, can go on these psychedelic trips and they're like, oh my God, I saw this and I rode around the galaxy and the universe and it felt so good on a unicorn and oh my God, it felt so good. But it's like, what does that mean? And how do you integrate that to move the needle from where you are, right? And I think that's the piece that people either don't fully talk about or they don't think is important. They place importance on the experience, but then they don't do anything with it afterwards. And then they go and have another experience and don't integrate. And then it almost becomes this like awareness high. It's like, oh my God, I saw this and I realized this and this was because of my mom and this because of my dad. Well, what did you do with that?
Yeah, I was going to say it still requires a game plan after.
Yes. And that's the piece I think most people don't fully do, because that's where the hard work comes in.
That's what I'm saying, though. I guess I'm in fear that like it's going to be one of those things where kids just go and think it's going to fix them.
Yeah.
First of all, I hope no young people are able to do it. There should at least be a 25-year-old age limit on it. But listen, it's a hot topic. It's controversial. And I'm not a doctor either. And so like I want to preface this by saying like I'm certainly no expert and I'm certainly no doctor. And doctors generally would know better than somebody like me for sure. My concern comes from what I've seen happen in the industry when other drugs get introduced. That's all.
Is there like a general kind of recovery pro con kind of psychedelics? Like what's the
That's a good question, right? Because usually people coming off of opiates right now, because that's the big one, right? Because everybody's either gotten on fentanyl or some sort of pain medication, and so Suboxone, right? But like Suboxone or Subutex or some of those other drugs that it's like the synthetic opioids that actually can help people wean off of it. But there are people, it's very similar to methadone too, right? People are still on methadone today. That was a 1980s solution. Yeah. What's your take on methadone?
It's same. I think there's better things out there, right? Like why are we doing something? And again, it's like each person's different, but I think there are better medications. And my whole thing is like, we want to keep people from dying. right? And if that's really going to keep you from dying, do it. And continue to move forward, right? Like, how can you, not that you're kind of reliant on something else, but it's like, okay, how can you potentially move forward after that? Because I've had some people that have been on Suboxone and they'll tell me like, it was harder to get off Suboxone than it was to kick heroin.
Correct.
You know? And so it's like, these are the things we kind of weigh out.
But it is keeping them alive.
Is that keeping them alive?
But again, it's keeping them alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I guess it's just it's a hot topic and it's different for everybody, right? Yeah. I don't hear it talked about a lot on podcasts. And so I'm always just curious because, listen, I love cutting edge medicine. I think medicine is one of the great things about, our country. But big pharma also is known for pumping shit we don't need.
Exactly.
Modern medicine is amazing. I have a dad that's a heart patient and, drugs have kept him alive. I understand that there are certain things that are just absolutely amazing about medicine. But when it comes to this, it's a little bit different because you're dealing with people that have no self-regulation when they're in the middle of their addiction. And so adding another drug to their repertoire is not necessarily always the right solution. And
absolutely.
So, and doctors, a lot of doctors, if they're not addiction doctors, but they want to prescribe something because somebody mentions it to them, these guys are so busy that they just write a script.
They're so busy and they don't have the time or training or education to really sit with someone nor care, to be honest with you. I hate to say it that way, but it's true, right? Sure. When you've got 60 patients you're seeing in a day, are you going to stop and ask someone like, hey, like what about your emotional health? Yeah. What about addiction? What about trauma? They don't have time, and I don't blame them. No. It's just the system that we're in is a little bit broken. But
but there could be like policies and procedures that get put in place too, right? Like before you prescribe this medication, it requires a full like mental health assessment or, things of that sort. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud here because I mean, it's not like I actually have given that a ton of thought. You just brought that up and I thought it was a good point. Maybe there is something that they do before where there's somebody that's asking the important questions about this stuff. Of course, hopefully the doctors are asking how long you've been using for, how long you've been doing this and what's the goal here. And then hopefully there's a plan to get off of it eventually.
Absolutely. I think just more awareness and the more education that we can provide, because we see this even with clients who, there's a joke. It's like, okay, the 13th step is getting your teeth fixed, right? And so many of our clients go through these oral surgeries and things. And if the surgeon's not asking, hey, do you have a prior history of addiction? Here's, 60 oxys. Now we've got a relapse situation, right? And 100%. How do they handle that?
There's absolutely no way that somebody can, well, I shouldn't say that. Hopefully, if they're working some sort of recovery program, they can have somebody that either holds the medication and make sure they take it as prescribed or, whatever the case. That's where you see, at least for me, the majority of the relapses in the rooms, right? Is when there's something that happens where they end up overtaking a pill. But the idea is to be honest about it. At the end of the day, we all just have today. Yeah. And that's it's like whoever woke up first has the most sobriety. Yeah. I've heard that before. I like that. Yeah. That's why I woke up at 3 this morning. I get excited on film day and I always want to make sure everything's going to go smoothly. But
in the quiet hills of Marin County, there's a place where healing begins. A place where alcohol or drugs no longer control your life. At Live Oaks Wellness, we offer compassionate, client-centered care for those struggling with addiction. Our licensed drug and alcohol detox and residential programs are designed to help you take the first step toward recovery with a team that truly understands the journey. You don't have to walk this path alone. At Live Oaks, we're here to help you rebuild, restore, and reclaim your life. Take the first step today. Live Oaks Wellness. Healing starts here.
You wrote a book too, right? I mean, can you tell me a little bit?
I wrote a book. Yeah, it was more about just kind of leadership and just kind of my journey to get there. I mean, sometimes as entrepreneurs, we kind of get into this thinking it's about the other people and the people we're going to help, and it is. But so much of that gets limited by ourselves, right? And what we're willing to do and kind of the growth work. So that was just kind of a chapter really about like that journey.
And what's the book called again?
It's called Leadership, The Great Awakening.
Leadership, like exactly. With H-E-R, yeah.
H-E-R, The Great Awakening. And it was just a fun thing. It was just an opportunity to kind of really stretch me and kind of grow. But it just really kind of documents the journey of growing recovery consultants from a business perspective and from a leadership perspective.
And there's about 24 other women in that book, correct?
Yeah, there are 24 other women and just kind of all different fields. And it was a really cool collaborative experience to just be with like other women writers telling their story and their form of leadership in whatever role that they're in.
Everybody's got their own style, right? And I believe that like I'm a mosaic, right? I'm a mosaic of every single person I've ever met in my life. I have a piece of them that I liked, that I took and I kept, right? Yeah. And so I believe I'm a mosaic of everybody whose path that I've crossed. And being that mosaic, you get to learn from some of these people. I mean, listen, there's an act of humility in there too, right? Because, you know, it's being able to admit that maybe somebody knows something better than you, or maybe, you know, or maybe you like something about somebody and that's why you're emulating it. But like to have that as a collective, I think that's really cool to be in one spot where you get to read about, you know, 24 different women's experiences.
Thank you for saying that and bring that up, Jack. Yeah, I think it is. And it's just kind of this perpetual, how do I continue to grow and stretch myself as a human? And it was just one of those endeavors. How do I lean in the things that I'm scared about? Or, ooh, what if Shirley doesn't do it well? What if Shirley doesn't do it perfectly? And just really lean into that experience. And I will say, you know, psychedelics is one of those things that kind of gave me that lean in of I don't have to be controlled all the time. It's
there
okay.
It is.
And, you know, we all fear the unknown. That's just a human condition.
100%.
It's the scariest thing for the mind to go into something that we have no idea what it's going to be like. We will continue to choose chaos, pain, depression, anxiety because it's familiar.
All the rabbit holes.
Rather than stepping into something that we don't know. That is like a red alert to the mind. And so there's something of like, how do you lean in to that, right? And then fall into that experience and know and trust that you're going to be okay because you fundamentally are. And you brought up something earlier too, and I just kind of wanted to say, like, I've worked hard to not adopt these notions of what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's bad, because that comes with a lot of judgment.
Sure.
I think for a lot of people that we're working with that are in active addiction, trying to get out, they'll come to me and say, am I an addict? Am I going to be an addict for the rest of my life? And I'm not like some fairy that like goes around and you aren't.
Yeah.
But I always say it's either working for you or it's not. And if it's not, let's take a look at it and see what are you choosing to kind of create in your life. You know, I had someone who came to me and, you know, and I think you know this, we're inclusive too in terms of harm reduction. Our biggest thing is if someone is willing to do something different, let's fucking figure out the way.
Let's go.
Yeah. Because, you know,
the willingness is the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. But if they're willing, but it doesn't look like some whatever way that I have in my mind it needs to look, it's judgmental and shaming them. So it's like, let's collect the data and see how it goes. And, you know, I had a client who came and said, you know, my partying cocaine is way out of control and I definitely want to stop. But you're not going to fucking tell me I'm going to stop drinking. And I was like, okay, it's my livelihood. This is what I do. I go to happy hours. And I said, okay, let's see how it works for you. You know, in that span of time, he ended up being 5150 a few times. And I said, okay, normal people.
We have more evidence that this isn't working.
This is the data. You know, you want to drink like a normal person. Normal people aren't getting hospitalized, right? So now what do you want to do? Do you want to keep going to this and canceling your business, you know, appointments and coming up with reasons why you can't make it? Or do you want to do something about it?
Yeah.
And he ended up doing something about it. And now he's 4 years sober.
Wow.
And
But it's also because you stayed in touch. You didn't force something down his throat.
I didn't force anything. Because at that time, if I would have said, no, you've got to be 100% absent off everything, I would have lost him.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been as empowering because he collected his own data. And I'm like, all right, is this going to work for you?
He also would have been less likely to call you when it went bad.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Because of the shame of like, oh, she was right. And then now, you know, now where do I go?
But because you came from a place of like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go for it.
Let's
like,
go
just
for
let
it.
me know how it goes.
Yeah. And then we continue to stay with it and just keep reflecting the truth. Like, oh, it's okay. It's like, is it?
I definitely see a place in this world for some harm reduction. That's another sensitive subject, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Suboxone, that's the naltrexone for alcohol and other things. Like, I mean, that's there's a lot of social support meetings that are like anti that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I feel bad because everybody has a fucking opinion, right?
Yes.
So I would say probably recovery consultants, if I could like sum it up for you, you're very individualized.
Absolutely. And that's such a word that's so used, in our industry.
Yeah, but it's best described what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. But we really are meet the person where they are, not where we want them to be, where they are. And I think that's can be really challenging for people because, like you said, with the opinions, that comes from us, right? And that comes from our personal experience we're projecting on someone else. So when we come into the picture and every client is a clean slate, what is best for them? Right? What's working, what's not working for them.
Yeah.
And we come into it with that sort of mindset.
Well, I'm here on camera and I'm willing to admit, even just talking to you for a little bit here makes me feel a little bit better about some of that stuff. And I
appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like I have my opinions, I have my, whatever, but I'm not stuck in it. I'm not stuck in it. When I talk to people and they can convince me of something different, maybe convince is the wrong word, but get me to see where their perspective.
A different perspective.
Right. It kind of lightens it a little bit. I mean, I know you pay close attention, right? And so like, of course, anybody that's in your care is going to get that, hey, we're only going to do this if it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I fear because every industry, like you're going to have the people that don't take the time.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's some irresponsibility going on and we're talking about a human life. And like now all of a sudden they've been introduced to something and now they love K-holes or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's a responsibility to it.
There is.
Right. And I think not everyone takes it in the same way. Like I said, when there's money and opportunity, you're going to get all sorts of players. Right. And that's just life. That's
Greed.
Just human life. And we see that in our recovery industry. We see it in every industry. And so there are people that run it with integrity and there are people that don't. And it's just discerning the difference.
I remember telling my mom too, I was about probably a year sober and I think I had done my first little like overnight with somebody, just making sure that they were safe or whatever. And I was like, I think I want to work in recovery. And I said, I think I'm going to go get my drug and alcohol counselor license, which I did. And then, and I was like, I really enjoy working in this industry. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, it's not going to be like finance. It's not going to be like all these other businesses like where there's like this, salesy / greed. I get to work with honest people. I get to do it. And the naivety in that statement, right? As I'm listening to myself say it right now is just hilarious to me because it can be a filthy business. The cool part is integrity is easy to spot, I think. Yeah. And it's really easy to know when somebody's in it for the right reasons and when they're not. Maybe it's not in the first encounter, but certainly usually after a few, it's pretty easy to tell. And so I just think it's super important because, man, was I naive.
Yes, we all were.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, everybody's really supportive and all this stuff. And it's like, nope, everybody's talking shit. Everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing that.
Yes.
Like
it's just like with anything. There's a shadow side to everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about perfection because we all fucking make mistakes, but it's like, how do we own them? How do we keep growing from them? And I'm on a mission to like help more people save their own lives because there are too many people that are dying.
I agree.
And even people that you and I know who's got a lot of time under their belt and they're still dropping. And it's like, that's just not okay.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not.
It's avoidable.
It's avoidable, 100%. And I think sometimes, it's hard as the providers, as the helpers, to then ask for help. And I see that a lot within our industry too. So I hope that can change.
I'm with you. If I can be of any help in that regard with you, just let me know. I mean, absolutely. I support that 100%. What I'm loving some of the terms that you're using here, and I really think you should write a book called The Shadow Parts.
Ooh.
I do. I love that term. I think it's really cool because it's like all the things that you don't want to look at about yourself. Yeah. And I've never heard it put that way, but it's very, very eloquent.
Oh, thanks, Jack. And it's the truth. And it's like out of the shadows comes a lot of light. Ooh. Right? On the other side of that, it's like if we can go, the only way out is through.
I can see it now. I can. I just saw the front of the book. I just saw the front of it. Yeah. From darkness to light. Ooh, the shadow parts. That's a really good one, man. I mean, you're making me think that I need to go back and like do a fourth and fifth step right now. Like, is there anything that I'm not being honest about right now? Like, Jesus.
There's just so much, like you said, there's so much freedom on the other side.
There is.
When you're able to face it, there's so much freedom on the other side. But I also understand it's not just like, oh, just go do it. Like I always say, like the path is simple, but it's not easy.
No, if it was easy,
right?
everybody would do it.
If it was easy, everyone would do it. If we did all the things we should, we wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
But we don't. And we're humans. And we keep fucking up and then we keep learning. We keep fucking up and we keep learning. That's the path of being a human.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more that we can accept that from a place of like compassion and love for ourselves and for others, just make it a lot easier.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I agree so much. That's so good. I was thinking about being on the other side of that, the freedom portion of what you were saying. And anytime somebody mentions that term, like, you know, it was such a special moment for an addict or alcoholic when you can actually feel that. I believe that's when obsession gets relieved, right? When you can feel that freedom for the first time because you're like, I didn't know it could be this good. And trying to translate that to people, like anybody that's struggling, that's watching this right now, that freedom I'm talking about, I wish there were words to describe what it feels like on the other side of addiction and alcoholism because if I could describe it accurately, there's no way you wouldn't want to be doing what I'm doing.
100%. And I think that's the hard thing as humans, we're experiential. You can hear all of the things and it's like, but if you've never experienced it, it's going to be hard to trust or even know what you're talking about.
But listen, I'm one of the stubborn ones too. I did it for 4 years. I relapsed for 4 years straight, I think, between 2011 and 2015, where it was just like, you know, because I didn't want to do the work, right? I was trying to find the shortcuts and shit like that. Maybe wasn't willing to look at my shadow parts and maybe wasn't looking to get honest with myself and maybe wasn't willing enough to do the work, which is essentially what it boiled down to. I'm lazy. But yeah.
We all are to some degree, right?
But I remember, I guess sometimes you just have to be in enough pain for that change, right? And I think that's important too. And everybody's bottom is relative, right? And in my experience, it doesn't matter if you're the guy on the bench that's been homeless or if you're the person who got scared because they just realized they had a glass of wine and drove with their kid in the car.
Exactly.
Like, and just because you might walk into a meeting or listen to somebody's story and their bottom is they killed somebody in a DUI crash doesn't mean that you have to go any further because that's not your story, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's a progressive illness and, you know, you keep drinking and there's a really high probability that one of those things will happen to you, you know, and you can make whatever your bottom is. Maybe it's just a massive hangover. If that's your bottom, good.
Yeah. I always say, you know, for people I've adopted in kind of the coaching work, we all have payoffs and costs for everything that we do. And when the payoffs are more than what it costs us, we're going to keep engaging in it, right?
Sure.
Humans, we're not going to make any change until we're really uncomfortable about something.
There it is.
That's where growth is.
That's where growth is.
If we want to be comfortable, then why the hell would we change? We keep being comfortable. That's what we're seeking. But once it gets uncomfortable, once there's enough costs and it's impacting you, now I don't know. I don't know, you know, and that's where the change can happen. That's sometimes where we work with families to kind of create that uncomfortableness, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the idea behind an intervention, right? You kind of bring the bottom to them, the uncomfortable to them. But, you know, that's the other part about getting free of stuff too, is like you have to walk through that uncomfortable stuff.
Yes.
You really do.
Yes. For the person who's struggling with addiction and for the parents. And the family. And I think that's sometimes not discussed enough, that they think, oh, this is now, you know, Johnny's going to be whisked away to rehab and we're all great. No, it's going to be really fucking uncomfortable for you because you've been in this dynamic for however long and it's going to feel different. You know, when we talk about being scared of the unfamiliar, well, if Johnny goes to treatment and gets well and we're not coming in and rescuing all the time and jumping in, now what do we do? And, you know, it's a thing that's not talked about often, but it's what prevents a lot of recovery. Sometimes these families continue to kind of jump in.
No shit.
And they're like, oh,
the family's behaviors didn't change.
Exactly.
Johnny's might have, but the families didn't.
Exactly. So I always say it's like taking a fish out of a fish bowl, cleaning up the fish, but then putting it back into a dirty fish bowl. fish is going to get sick again,
Yeah.
right? Unless you clean the whole container and you clean the whole fish bowl. And I think that's sometimes like the opportunity with a family, because at the end of the day, a lot of times they're the ones holding the leverage with the financial, with, I've got, a house for them to stay at or an apartment. And it's like, oh, it's making it real. You're making it too comfortable for them, right? And so what's the impetus to get sober?
Yeah.
It's like if they've got a place to use and you're giving them money, man, that's a recipe to just keep doing that.
That analogy about the fish in the fishbowl.
Yeah.
I mean, profound.
It's just a matter of time. So it's really important why, people in this industry are doing the family work and just really supporting the family and just letting them know, hey, you're going to be really fucking uncomfortable. As you see this, or you're setting limits for the first time, you're setting boundaries, you're going to be really uncomfortable. But if you want Johnny to change, you've also got to change.
Well, it goes against a lot of maternal and paternal feelings, right? In the sense that like they have the protection factor going and they want to protect their kid inherently.
Yes. And I always say that, with families, like I understand. I'm a parent too. Yeah. It feels counterintuitive.
It does.
Right? Johnny's reaching out and in pain and asking for help. I should help him. Right?
Typically.
That's just a maternal parental kind of thing.
If it was any other disease, you would.
But in this, it's kind of counterintuitive. And so you've kind of have to go against your instincts, and that is really challenging.
Sure.
And again, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of compassion. Like, hey, I can see how like hard this would be for you guys, and it is. And here's why. But I'm telling you, and also you've been doing it for the last how many ever years, and it's not working.
Yeah.
So are you willing to do something else?
Sometimes you got to point out the obvious, right? Because they're not looking at their shadow.
No,
they're not family's got a shadow too.
Parts.
Everybody's got
Everyone's looking at Johnny.
Yeah,
Johnny's
you may not be the identified patient. However, everybody's got their shadow parts too. Yeah, and listen, I mean, codependency can kill people. I love the fact that you guys do a lot of family work as well, because not only from the educational side, they also don't realize that they're sick.
Yes.
They see somebody else as the identified patient. However, they are just as sick if there's a lot of codependency going on. And if they don't do something about their own behavior, they're not going to know what, like you said, they're not going to know what to do when the guy finally gets sober.
Absolutely.
Because now they have like lost their purpose almost.
Exactly. They've lost their purpose and now they don't know what to do. The whole identity shifted and it's like, they don't know quite what to do. So I think like the more that we can sit with families and really help them understand, hey, here's kind of the playbook of what's going to happen. We can kind of front run it and then like really hold them accountable. I'm sure you hear this all the time too, but like with families that we work with, there's this, I want them to get better, but I expect them to act like they have for the last 15 years. And I'm like, oof, you can't want them to get better, but only expect them to fail. I was like, you've got to change the way that you look at your son, daughter,
100%.
Or loved one, because that's the energy that they can feel, right? Ooh. If they can feel that you think that they're going to fail, that you ultimately think they're just a fuck up, they're going to live up to that, right? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I remember, I think I breathalyzed to get into my parents' house for a couple of years, to be honest with you, just to, show them. It was more along the lines, I don't know if I had to do it that long. It was close though. It was more for me to prove to them, because I also don't want to put my family in that position either. I remember sitting at barbecues and then my mom's just staring at me as I'm like, I might be a little bit erratic that day or something, any little behavior change or whatever. And then I get the side eye and she's like thinking something. So I'm like, all right, Mom, you want me to breathalyze or do you want me to do this? Or the trust, it takes a long time for trust to come back.
It does.
It takes a long time for trust to come back, but it does.
It does. I call it recovery credit, right? Your credit's kind of shot and sometimes it kind of is shitty, but it takes some time to rebuild.
I like that.
With your family and those around you, but it does. You do.
Yeah, right? You got a 560
credit
score with your family, and you got to get it back up to 850.
Yeah.
How do you do that? It's going to take some time.
And you show up and you keep, like you're saying, being accountable. And, because it's like these families go through their own trauma, right, with the addiction. And so, like you said, in that example with the barbecue with your mom, it's like, Big Jack's looking a little different.
Exactly what she was thinking.
And she's going back in her mind like, oh God, is this going to be like all the other times? Because, they're still living in their trauma. But, with time, she's able to now see like, hey, you're not getting the same side eye now that you were then. I'm imagining.
No, not anymore.
Yeah.
No, not anymore. It's been a while. But unfortunately, we make people skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because they don't want to be let down. So they're doing it to protect themselves.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a natural thing for them is to like, you know, just make that assumption.
Yeah.
Because if they're wrong, okay.
Yeah.
In their assumption. But if they're right, then they were right.
Yeah. And here's where that translating piece kind of comes in, because we talk to the clients and we're like, hey, I think like when we're able to take on someone else's perspective is how we grow as people, right? So the individual who's struggling with addiction, if they can see it from their family's perspective, they have an opportunity to grow. Hey, yeah, I know it sucks. I know it sucks to keep like drug testing and you feel like you're, you know, under a microscope, blah, blah, blah. But it's because your credit's at a 520 right now, right? And we want to get you back at 800. And here's kind of the way to do it. Yeah. You know, and then we kind of give that perspective to the family members. Hey, you know, now Johnny's sober for a year. Do we still need to test him every day? You know, let's let up a little bit and give him some agency and some freedom.
There it is. Too, show him that his credit increased.
Exactly.
You know, maybe he's at a 700 now. Yeah. Who knows? Right?
Yeah.
You know, after a year sobriety, maybe 650.
Yeah.
You don't want to give them too much rope.
But the point is like it takes time on both sides. And I think both sides have to really like understand that. Because, you know, sometimes in early recovery, we're like, well, I'm 30 days sober. Why the fuck are they still like asking? And it's like, well, because you've been there before and they've been through a lot. Check your history. Yeah, exactly. Check your credit history.
Jesus Christ.
They're a little bit skeptical to give you
How many 30-day chips do you have in your jewelry box?
Yeah. So it's just a matter of just understanding someone else's perspective. And I think it's like, hey.
Shirley, why doesn't everybody sit in somebody else's shoes before making judgment? Because I feel like I operate my life that way. I always I might overly do it, right? Yeah. Where I'm like thinking that I know what you're thinking and then it gets me even in more trouble, right? But I'm trying to be sensitive to what you might perceive.
Yeah.
That's like part of my overthinking, right? Is like, I don't, you know, I'll always disclaim everything I'm about to say, right? I'm like, I don't want to offend you. However, like, you know, I'm just curious if you want to do, you know, like, I'm just so like scared. I tiptoe around people, you know, I constantly am tiptoeing around people because I think I know what they're thinking. I still have that addict, like want to please everybody mentality, you know? I just wish that everybody would be sensitive to everybody else's perspective.
I hear you. Same. Absolutely. I mean, one of our kind of unofficial mottos is more love, less fear. And I think a lot of us operate in fear because in order to take on someone else's perspective, you have to kind of be vulnerable and willing to admit that, well, then maybe your perspective isn't fireproof and isn't the only right way. And then if that's the case, well, what does that mean about Shirley? And what does that mean about me as a person? And some people just aren't willing to go there because it's easier to come in with the judgment. And I know this about you and I know this because it gives them some sense of significance rather than sitting with someone and really, truly being curious without judgment about someone else's perspective. It's what we do innately as humans. We've just gotten away from that. Yeah. We're all so busy now and we're doing 1,000 things at once and we don't create the space for ourselves to do that.
There's definitely a lot of sensitivity going on in this world.
Yeah. Or I would say like a lack of sensitivity. I think people are up in it very reactive, but I would say that there's not sensitivity to really other people's perspectives. That's
a fair point. Yeah.
Your perspective is right and other perspectives like yours is right. And then you try to fight the other perspective. And what does that really do?
It doesn't accomplish a thing.
It just creates more resentment, hate, and just anger. And it's like, who does that serve?
We are in the midst of the worst drug crisis in U.S. history.
The CDC has named fentanyl, deadliest drug in the United States.
The drug is fentanyl.
My name is Jeremy, and I'm a recovering fentanyl addict. I've overdosed more times than I can count. I believe I was revived so I could carry the message to the addict that still suffers. Silence makes you complicit. You either recover loudly or you die quietly. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to help you save your own life.
Learn more at recoverordie.org.
I would love for hospitals to get education a little bit more on addiction, you know? I feel like a leper. I felt like a leper every time I went in there. And that's not listen, thank God for the wonderful people in hospitals that do their work. I mean, nurses and doctors in the ER, God bless them, you know, like I feel bad that I was probably the guy that was either throwing up or, you know, the guy that was in there for the 12th time because I got alcohol poisoning or was rude because I was under the influence, or I feel bad for them, but there's no other place to go really.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like ERs need to be more educated on the addiction.
I think the whole medical field, just in general, I think there's just not much education or training or even kind of thought around addiction, emotional health, and how like it really affects your body.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of go into it looking at it like through a very siloed approach. Okay, well, what's the ICD like code for this and how can we get paid for insurance? But they're not looking at the whole person, right? This person's in here. Well, could they have some trauma? Could they have some mental health going on? Could they have some serious addiction? And how do we really like help that person? But they're not trained that way and they're not educated, that way. I've got a brother who's a doctor and he's like, we had, I think, a 2-hour course in the span of 4 years in medical school about addiction. Yeah. And it was just kind of this like throwaway thing where it's like, oh, I just need to do it, but no one really cares. And, so I think there's just a fundamental shift where more people are talking about like how the mind and body are connected, but we are not really integrating that into kind of our medical healthcare system. And so I think like the more that we can really educate people and bring awareness and maybe in some stories, right? Because that's like when people can connect to other people's stories, the vulnerability like that comes out of that, that's how we like soften our perspective, right? Like just like you said, kind of sitting here with me, hearing maybe some opposing ideas that kind of you had, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I can kind of see that a little bit. So it's like, I think we need more of that.
Yeah, but without the story, you can't necessarily connect. You almost need an example.
I think a story, and again, like the perspective shift, right? Because like that ER nurse, like they're dealing with a lot of shit.
They are.
But if they can,
it was not a complaint.
Yeah. And if they could see like, okay, this person's in here for the 12th time with alcohol poisoning, they're not doing it because they're here to piss you off and make your life or this shift
they don't want to
terrible.
Be there either.
They don't want to be there either, right? So it's nothing about you, but I think sometimes when we personalize things, that's where we get upset and that's where we get pissed. And it's like, it's not about you. This other person's really in pain.
Well, I'm starting to see a lot of the social workers, whether it's just a regular social worker or an LCSW that's in the hospital, whatever, who is ever on shift, can provide resources, right? And I've noticed that some of they call them like navigators, healthcare navigators now, where they're connected with people that are in the addiction treatment field and things of that sort. And so at least if they're in the hospital, they could either, because, most people may not know that, there's a detox nearby or something, and if these people could go from the hospital to a detox door to door, and get them the help that they need. I mean, I guarantee you there's detoxes out there that would be willing to pick people up from the
Absolutely.
hospital, like that's a given. And so to just get people on the right track, because sometimes people just don't know, right? They just keep going to the ER, they get a banana bag, they get released, they drink it and do the same thing the next day.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah, a lot of people do because you don't know any difference. If you don't know what other resources are out there or what's available, you're just going to keep.
Well, that's
doing
why I mean the education of it, right? I mean, there should be pamphlets and some sort of packets. That's, I know they have like the 20 questions, are you an alcoholic thing, and I'm not sure if they even give that out in the ER. To be honest with you, I'm sure they have something in there regarding addiction and substance abuse. Yeah, but if there was like actually somebody that was in the hospital talking to these people saying like and recommending, right? Have the doctor come by, have somebody recommend it and say, listen, this is going to keep getting worse. You've been here 12 times and like you either need detox or some sort of residential treatment so that you can be away from booze for a period of time because you're not making good decisions right now.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. Like I wish that there were more mental and emotional health resources right there in the ER, right? You're seeing the medical component of it, but no one's dressed like if there was like a LCSW or someone who would kind of just sit with that patient and just say, what's going on? We've seen you in here 12 times.
Yeah. Have you thought about
this? Like, are you open to help? Like, what's going on? And do you want to keep cycling in like this? It's almost like intervention opportunities, right? They're opportunities to really like save a life and kind of get it off that like hamster wheel track because you're going to see them again.
Yeah. That's the one guarantee. Yeah. And unless they start doing something about it.
Unless they do something different.
I just feel like I went to the ER so many times. But then again, like I did know about, the options. I was educated, if I'm being honest, but I wasn't ready to stop drinking. So I thought I had, I still thought I could control it. That's the craziest part. This segment of the Pull Podcast is brought to you by Heartwood Home Detox. I'm convinced that there's not a thing that somebody can say, especially when you have that addictive brain. Like there wasn't anything that was going to fucking stop me.
Yeah.
You know, if you have made that decision in your head to go get drunk or high or whatever it is, like I remember chasing a guy down and I watched him walk like 3 miles in his bare feet to go score some crack in the Tenderloin just to get a hotel. And having somebody literally say like, you know, don't let him into the hotel. Don't let him into the hotel. The guy's like, he's got money. What are you talking about? I'm a business. Of course I'm going to let him in the hotel. It's like, he's just going to smoke crack in there. He goes,
yeah.
You know, and it's like there it is. It's like, dude, you walked 3 miles in San Francisco. Mind you, that's a pretty dirty sidewalk, you know, just to get crack and then go into a hotel room and then probably be in there for like a week. Yeah. You know, it's just scary, man. I don't know.
It is. And, you know, mental health addiction, none of it makes any rational fucking sense. No. But it's like, and when people try to apply that sort of like mindset to it, I'm like, oh man, you're going to get lost. You're going to go down a rabbit hole, try to understand something that's not understandable because it comes from an emotional place. Yeah. And when we do things that are from an emotional place, they don't make rational sense, but that's where we're acting from. And so, boom, you know, and I think more people that can understand that, the better. Because it's like you've got family sitting here that trying to apply this like rational lens. It's like you said, why would he walk 3 miles? Why would he do that?
It doesn't make fucking sense.
It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
And trying to make sense out of it is going to drive you crazy. Literally. And so the more that you can just accept that they're acting from their pain, they're acting from their addiction, they're not in the right place right now. And they need help and support. And what can you do?
What can you do? That's a mic drop moment. And to be honest with you, what I'm taking away from the conversation mostly is that just call for a consult, right? Exactly. Yeah, I mean, could they call?
Absolutely. We talk with people. We hear their situation and we kind of advise them, hey, are we going to be the right fit? If not, here's some other things to kind of consider and think about. But, you know, we take those cases that a lot of other people don't take because they don't fit whatever paradigm or whatever, you know, philosophy. And we're just here like, if they're willing,
there it is.
Let's find a way. Yeah. Right. And that's where the magic is. Because I really fundamentally believe all humans have the capacity to create the life they desire. How to get there and how to do it, that's where the fucking magic sauce is. And that's where we can kind of come in. But I really believe that I don't think there's a single person that's beyond help. And I think sometimes there is kind of this, oh, they've been doing this for a while. Oh, they've been on the streets for this long. Oh, they're kind of like beyond help. And it's like, no, they're not. And I just really fundamentally like believe that. And that's how we at Recovery Consultants really approach things. I'm like, what is it, right? Like maybe 10 other people haven't thought about it this way, but I like to think of people as kind of human puzzles. And I love to kind of figure out like, what's the thing that's going to make it move? What's missing here? And because there is something that's missing. To say that, like you said, people in addiction, even when they're actively in it, there's still a part of them they don't want to be in it. Mm-hmm. They wish there was something else. And so it's like, what is that way that we can kind of get in there and affect? And I think that's holding that sort of energy and that sort of philosophy and just really belief is, I think, what really makes a difference. Because if I, a provider, am going into a situation thinking, oh, this fucking guy is not going to make it. He's not. Like, I'm not going to come. No. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, it kind of starts with us. Like, how do we embody that and go into that with like I said, like looking past all the behaviors and all the history, but like down to the core person and the potential and like speaking and reaching that part of them. And I'm not saying it's 100% every time, but the more that we can do that, the more we can strip past all this other bullshit and kind of get to like the real heart of the person. And that's what's going to make the difference.
Wow. There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Shirley Wantland.
Thank you so much.
Do me a favor. What is the website that they can reach you at?
They can find us at recovery-consultants.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, Jack.